and welcome to Commissioner Chen.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm noting that the time is 2 o'clock, so we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome to the first meeting of the full County of San Diego Independent Redistricting Commission. Thank you all very much for your willingness to serve in this important role. My name is Andrew Potter, and I am the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. And for this initial onboarding process, I will serve as secretary for the commission. Additionally, for a brief period this morning, and after discussing it with Commissioner Boehm, who served as interim chair for the first two meetings, we felt it would be appropriate for me to serve as the presiding officer until a chair is selected when we get to item 6 on the agenda. So before we begin, I want to introduce several members of the team. I first want to introduce Assistant Clerk of the Board, Erin Demarest. She will be assisting me with note-taking, helping to answer your questions, and will serve as the clerk for the commission after today's meeting. She is outstanding, so you will be well served and probably better served than having me here. So you'll be in great hands. And additionally, we have a number of really outstanding staff that will be supporting you, and you will all get to know them really well over the next 12 months. And they will introduce themselves more fully over the next several meetings, but just wanted to take a chance for you to see their faces, and they'll all wave at you and say hello. But I want to kick it off with Barbara Jimenez. Barbara is the executive lead for redistricting. Barbara also works for the Health and Human Services Agency and is the director of the Central and South regions. So Barbara, if you give a little wave there, everybody can see you. And then I also want to introduce Liberty Donnelly. Liberty is the Deputy Director with the Health and Human Services Agency and will serve as a project manager for redistricting. She is joined by Nicole Temple, who is with the financial policy. She is a financial policy and planning officer with the county's Office of Financial Planning. She's also a lead with the county for the redistricting effort. And she also was a lead 10 years ago with the county's last redistricting effort in 2011. So she's a project manager along with Liberty. And then we also have Lizeth Tapia. She's an analyst with the Health and Human Services Agency, helping with records and contracts. And then finally, we have Marguerite Leone, who will serve as this commission's legal counsel. Marguerite is a partner with the law firm Nielsen, Marksheimer, Parnello, Gross, and Leone.
Hello.
They specialize in voting rights, redistricting, etc. And she is the expert statewide, and you're going to hear all about that shortly. Joining her is Hillary Gibson. She is part of the legal support team and is an associate with Nielsen Marksheimer. And so we are so happy to have them join the team. And again, you'll hear more fully from the two of them during agenda item 9. Now, in terms of the virtual meeting protocol, it's important that you keep your microphone on mute until it is your turn to speak. You may wish to use the raise hand feature located on your screen if you indicate if you wish to speak. And for the public's benefit, it would be important to keep your camera on so they're aware that you are fully participating. If you need to step away for a break, certainly feel free to do so at any time and turn off your camera. And if you are having technical difficulties, feel free to email me. We will assist. We are also available to provide some one-on-one training with using Zoom, although I'm sure all of you are very familiar with using Zoom as has become a regular part of our day-to-day lives recently. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions that are posted on the redistricting webpage at www.sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. Individuals that wish to speak must submit an online request to speak form. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 2. I would now like to call the roll for the record. Before I call the roll, I would like to note that all commissioners are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. So I'll ask each commissioner when I call your name to please unmute your microphone and say either here or present, and I will call you alphabetically by last name. So we'll begin with Commissioner David Boehm.
Here.
Commissioner Colleen Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Amy Caterina.
Here.
Commissioner Chris Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Sonia Diaz.
Here.
Great. Commissioner Elidia Dostal.
Here.
Commissioner Carmen Rosette Garcia.
I just go by Rosette. Rosette.
Rosette.
Yeah, and I'm
Great.
here.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Barbara Hanson,
Here.
Commissioner Kenneth Inman, Commissioner Christina Krugliak,
Here.
Commissioner Arvid Larson, we see you
Commissioner Larson is on mute, but he is here.
here, great. And Commissioner Fernandez Pons
Here.
and Commissioner John Russ
Here.
and Commissioner Ramesses Serban. And Mr. Serban, I didn't catch that? I see you. Looks like you're unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can, great.
Okay, yes, I'm present, and it's pronounced Ramesses.
Ramesses, thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, wonderful. We have everybody here, so happy to have you all participating. The next item on the agenda, item number 3, is commissioner introductions. And while hopefully you all have reviewed each other's applications, we thought it would be helpful for you to spend 1 to 2 minutes introducing yourselves and tell us a bit about what you do professionally and why you were interested in serving on the commission. Your introductions will also help with the upcoming agenda item when it comes to selecting a chair and vice chair. So we will go alphabetically by last name, just like we did with the roll call. And so we'll start with Commissioner Boehm.
Thank you, Mr. Potter, and greetings to all. My name is David Boehm. I'm a former diplomat with the State Department, having worked in Washington and U.S. embassies overseas for about 30 years. Having had, I think, one moment and one meeting very quickly with Commissioner Pons when he was there, but he won't remember it, so that's okay. I'm now an independent consultant, occasionally helping out with the State Department, but spending a lot of time with the U.S. military in exercises and role play scenarios and subject matter expertise duties. I also work very actively with the Chula Vista Elementary School District and the Sweetwater High School District at times of distance learning. So I can promise you, however difficult this may be, I think most of you know, the schools are having even more fun. I will just mention, as well as Andrew said, I've been the interim chair for the past couple meetings. It's been great fun, and I wanted to thank the folks who've already been working in the commission. But I wanted to say, just as an obligatory introduction, I don't think of us as 8+6 at this point, and I doubt anyone on this call does. I think of us as 14 starting now. I only say that because I know that's been an occasional issue in other commissions, but I don't get that feeling either from reading people's bios or from the way we've worked together. So thank you for the extended comments. Look forward to working with you all.
Great, thank you. We'll now move on to Commissioner Brown.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Colleen Brown, and I've spent my entire lifetime in public service. I, even in school, as I was going through school as a kid, I held various positions, of president and class representative and so forth. So as I came out of college, I ended up going to work for the state of California as an auditor doing sales tax audits. And I spent 26 years with them and retired from them and ended up going to work for a family business that we had. It was a manufacturing business. And I spent about 11 years in that position. And then I ended up going over and going to work as an auditor for the federal government for a couple of years doing defense contract audits. So it's only natural that I'm here on this commission doing something for the county. That's the only entity I hadn't really been hired by at this point. So I'm excited about the year coming up, and I'm kind of semi-retired in a way. So I'm ready to take on whatever comes my way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now go to Commissioner Katerina.
Hi everyone. Welcome to our new commissioners. My name's Amy Katerina.
I am a biotech consultant. I work in the corporate communications field. I provide investor relations, public relations, and corporate communications consulting for primarily startup biotechs, but also some larger companies. I'm an avid volunteer. I've been very active in my children's school district. I'm a Boy Scout mentor and merit badge counselor. I have 2 kids and they're out of school and I have more free time, and I felt like this was a very important position that needed to be filled, and I felt that I was a very independent thinker, and I felt that I would be a good commissioner. I'm really happy to join you all on this group. I think what we're doing is really important, and I'm looking forward to getting started. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to Commissioner Chen.
Hi, I'm retired from a career that spanned finance, leadership development, information technology, strategy, and intellectual property. I serve on several advisory boards. I'm on the board of directors of a couple of nonprofits. And I saw a Facebook ad suggesting I become a redistricting commissioner. So I replied to that, decided it was time to do a little public service.
Great, thank you. Glad you saw that Facebook ad. It's great. Moving on to Commissioner Diaz.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sonia Diaz, and I actually come from the nonprofit sector from 12 years of work in various different roles. Right now, my current role is in grant writing and fundraising. Prior to that, prior to nonprofits, I used to work in the California State Legislature as a legislative aide. So I had a lot of practice analyzing legislation, and public policy's always been one of my passions. And public service has also, and I've done a lot of volunteer work in my own community, serving as a president of my neighborhood council. And through that, I learned a lot about, open meetings, and also just really appreciating just ordinary people coming forward and being part of the process. And so I'm very honored to be part of this first ever independent redistricting commission. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on to Commissioner Dostal.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Olivia Dostal. I am an attorney. I have been in San Diego since I graduated from law school almost 20 years ago now. And prior to that, I also was a state worker. I was a franchise tax board income tax auditor. So I also worked for the state as an auditor. I know Commissioner Brown mentioned that, being an auditor. And I have mostly been involved in my volunteer work with working with kids. I love working with kids. I've been on the board of a charter school for a number of years. And when the opening came up for the commission, it was actually friends of mine who encouraged me to look at the application and to apply and represent South County. And so I'm really happy to be part of this. Really important. It's so important to have fair and equitable districts, and I'm excited to work with all of you.
Thank you. And next up, Commissioner Garcia.
Hi, again, my name is Rosette Garcia, and I'd like to start off by saying that I'm really thrilled to be a part of this commission and to have been selected. I'm eager to get started. A little bit about me. I am originally from Texas, and my family is from South Texas. You may have heard about the Rio Grande Valley. That's where my family is from. But I've been in San Diego since 1991, and my husband and I raised our 2 children here, and they are also grown and launched at this point. I've done a number of things in my career. I feel like I've lived many different lives, but starting many years ago doing cancer research administration, basically, and coordination. That was a long time ago. raised my children, went back to graduate school, taught literature and writing at the graduate level. But throughout all that time, I have always been, excuse me, a very active and engaged person in the community. And I was actually recruited to run for the school board in Cardiff when I was raising my kids there, and I served on the school board for a while, and been a member of the League of Women Voters on, San Diego Women's Foundation. I volunteer for the San Diego Foundation as well. And actually somebody told me about this opportunity, and I thought it sounded very interesting and like something I'd like to do. And so here I am. I am an avid crossword puzzle solver and other word play games. And again, I'm just delighted to be a part of this commission, and I'm eager to get started. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioner Hanson. Well, Commissioner Hanson will ask you to unmute yourself first.
Got it.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Barbara Hanson, and I live in the Claremont neighborhood of San Diego. My background is in public education. I majored in comparative governments when I was in college and went on to teach at the secondary level for almost 30 years. And the greatest part of it for me was explaining to young people about how the government works for them and how they can benefit from and support the government processes. The greatest thing that I did, I remember, was when my kids turned 18, they all got to go down to the office where there was a registrar and register to vote, and then come back and everybody would clap, and it was a really happy occasion. And so that's one of the highlights. I came to San Diego in 1997 and joined the nonprofit arena, both as an educator and as a grant writer and contract manager, and learned so much primarily about family and children's issues in the central part of San Diego County. I went on also to work with the Refugee Resettlement Agency and partnered with lots of agencies in San Diego at a time when grant funding was available and very central to the success of most programs that the county and the city depended upon. I am now retired and spend most of my time at home, of course. I'm an avid genealogist and work with my own family members and my other clients to help them unravel their own family history and learn so much about not only the people, but the times in which they lived. I'm working now on a long story about my own great-grandfather, who was a wild and crazy Scotsman. But anyway, it's been fabulous to reconnect with people that I'm actually related to but don't know, and to help them understand how we got to be the way we are today. So that's my background. My husband is retired Navy, and like so many people, we love San Diego.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioner Inman.
Yes, well, it's great to meet everyone virtually in these day and age. This is the way all these things happen, but it's definitely an honor to be on this commission. A little background, I'm from Poway. I was an assistant professor of economics, Claremont McKenna College up in the LA area, did economics, taught the classes everybody loves to take, macroeconomics, statistics, econometrics. And then I went into the private sector, and in the private sector, I did a lot of things with consumer behavior data and information, building predictive models, managed large teams that would build those models that give you the pop-up ads out there on the internet, as well as a lot of models to help companies better manage their internal information as well as external information. Recently retired. And when I retired, people asked me, well, what are you going to do with all your time? And what I've gotten to do with my spare time is actually the things I wanted to do with data. I love data, I love analytics, and I love maps. The intersection of those is called GIS, and it comes exactly within the purview of what this commission's doing. I read the Poway Chieftain one day, and there was this little blurb in there. It said, we're forming this independent commission, sign up. I did. And, I'm just so excited to be part of this and actually getting to apply some of the stuff that I have done all my life and loved to a real world application to help my community. So that's a little bit on my background, what I do in my fun time now when I'm not sitting at my computer writing Python code and doing GIS kind of stuff, which actually I do. My kids and my wife all, it's like, what are you doing sitting in front of your computer programming? You're retired. And I say, well, this is exactly what I want to do. But I also love to hike, mountain bike, get out and really enjoy San Diego, the weather here. That's why, a lot of us live here now today is simply because of the weather and the ability to be outside and really enjoy the environment. So again, great to meet everybody virtually, happy to be here and just excited to get on with the business. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next up, Commissioner Krugliak. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, that was very impressive.
Okay.
Yes, it's Krugliak, it's Russian. So hi, everyone. It's very nice to virtually meet you. My name is Christina Krugliak. I have been in San Diego for about 13 years. I moved here during grad school where I studied bioinformatics, which is what I've been doing ever since. So I spent 10 years at Illumina, which is a large biotech here in San Diego focused that is the leader in next-gen sequencing. And just earlier this year, I was recruited to a small startup to lead their informatics function. I'm having a great time. So my focus both at Illumina and at my new role is in cancer diagnostics development based on genomics. So it's something that I'm very passionate about and excited to use data in order to address that very important problem. I have 3 small children, so that's why I have a virtual background and why I'm mostly going to be on mute, because when I speak, there could be a lot of noises in the background. But I heard about the commission on NPR, and I just think that this is something that is so incredibly important to do impartially and fairly, because it has such an important, it has such impact for such a long period of time that I wanted to contribute if I was able and qualified. So I wanted to apply and support this important work. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I really look forward to working with all of you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Larson. Mr. Larson, we're going to ask you to please unmute yourself.
Yes, got it.
There you go.
Well, I'll start again. Hi, everybody. I'm a long-term resident of San Diego. I go by the first name of Arv, and only my mother calls me Arvid. And my wife and I live in Pacific Beach, on the beach, and are very happy in what we do here. In my background, I have a PhD in both electrical engineering and computer science, and I've been involved in information security and computer security for a good part of my life, and the application of government information systems. As an independent consultant, I've worked mainly for the Navy here in San Diego. Before that, I worked in the White House for a while, and I've been involved in several both small and large companies, and the startup of 2 small high-tech companies up in the Bay Area. It's a great opportunity, I think, to be a volunteer in a committee like this. I was honored to serve as a grand juror a couple of years ago for the San Diego County Grand Jury. And I learned more about the county and the issues and the people and the demographics, the geography, and the many, many issues that the Board of Supervisors and we as citizens have to deal with. So I think this is a continuation of that. I've been a volunteer in a number of organizations, most recently on the board of the Cabrillo National Monument Foundation, which supports our only national park here in San Diego County. And I served as the president for a couple of years and the chairman of the board. Before that, I was a volunteer vice president for the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, in charge of 186,000 members here in the US. And that was quite a opportunity and privilege. I chaired a number of IEEE committees having to do with technology policy and testified on the Hill on policy issues over the years. So I'm looking forward to this service, and I think it's a privilege to work with all of you. Look forward to it.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Pons.
Hello, how are you? My name is Fernandez Pons. I go by Frank. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to be a part of this prestigious commission. I read all of your bios and you should all be chairman, I got to tell you, because you are so incredibly qualified and you have such a diverse past. So it's just a privilege to be here. So I go by the name of Frank. I'm a husband of one, a father of two, and a recent grandfather of a baby boy, and he is now 11 months old. I spent 33 years in the Navy, and I retired as a Rear Admiral here in San Diego. And since retiring, I became an independent consultant in the public and private sectors in the areas of military strategy and policy, operations, leadership development, and maritime safety and security. I look forward to working with all of you because, you know, there are four things that I think are absolutely necessary in this position. The first being character, and the second one being competency, the third one being courage, and the fourth and not least, compassion. I'm looking forward to figuring out where David and I met, because I did work at the State Department for Secretary Condoleezza Rice as a senior naval advisor. So somewhere our paths did cross, David. I'm trying to figure it out, and we'll talk and we'll figure it out together. But thanks a lot, and I'm glad to be a part of this commission.
Thank you. Now move on to Commissioner Russ. Commissioner Russ, I know you're having some technical issues. We just promoted you to panelist. Let's see if we can hear you. We'll give you a minute.
And Commissioner Russ, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself because I think you tried calling in when your computer access wasn't working.
Well, we'll come back to him. So let's hear from Commissioner Serban.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, fellow commissioners and county staff. My name is Ramesses Serban. I live in Penasquitos, which is next door to Poway. I've lived here since 1985. So I've pretty much grown up in San Diego, went to high school at Mount Carmel. I went to UCSD, graduated with a degree in urban planning, and was an urban planner for about 8 years or so. So I also had have worked with GIS data sets and demographic data and those kinds of things. Most recently, as an urban planner, I'd worked with the DoD in planning California military installations. That feels like another lifetime because I'm now a practicing attorney. I work as a civil rights lawyer for a nonprofit law firm where my work specifically addresses allegations of housing discrimination, as well as right now I'm doing a majority of my work is in responding to the current eviction crisis that's been brought about by the coronavirus. During law school, I served on my town council. I chaired our planning board, and now I am also a board member of a diversity bar group why was I interested in serving in the Independent Redistricting Commission? I've had a strong interest in community empowerment and election law for a number of years. Back in 2010, when the state did this, I was involved in organizing communities of interest at that time because I'd always felt that redistricting is a very, very important issue. And again, I was involved in 2014 when Chula Vista was going through their first round of the districting process. And so when 2020 came around, I knew there would be some opportunities to join redistricting boards. And I'm happy that I'm able to participate as a commissioner on this commission. So I look forward to working with all of you and doing the work of the people.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, Commissioner Russ, looks like we can see you.
Finally, finally, you wouldn't believe I'm an engineer. You know, I've been having problems. So I had you on my big computer, and that wasn't, and I did hear you guys. So I called in, so I was able to hear most of what was said. But I'm glad to be back online with you. Yeah, when I graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, I spent 8 years on active duty, and then another 15 or 16 so in Naval Reserves. And during that time, I worked in the energy patch, both for in the public and private sectors, and actually I continue doing that today as a consultant on various energy projects. I was an adjunct faculty in the Department of Economics at San Diego State for 30 years, and it was in my study of economics. I got an advanced degree in economics as well. But in my study of economics, I became very interested in public policy, very interested in demographics. I do some pro bono work for the city of Poway, mainly on energy issues. They come to me and ask me some things. So I'm very interested in just what's going on around the community, not just in Poway, but the entire county. So I'm very pleased to be on board. And I'm glad that I'm finally online again.
We are too, great. Well, thank you, everybody. As you heard, this is just a really, really outstanding group, and there certainly is a wide variety of experience and backgrounds on this commission. So I think the county will be well served by all of you. Moving on to item number 4. This is the opportunity for me to administer the oath or affirmation as required by the California Constitution to the newly appointed commissioners. You will all receive an oath card in the mail with a self-addressed stamped envelope, and please sign the oath card where it's indicated and return it to me. So I will ask Commissioners Dostal, Garcia, Inman, Krugliak, Pons, and Servin to please unmute yourself and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name.
I, Ramesses
I, Christina Krugliak,
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the
the
Constitution
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the
and the
Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
That I will
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the
to
Constitution
the
of the United States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the
and
Constitution
the
of the State of
Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
That
I
I
take
will
this
that I take
obligation
this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental
without any
reservation
mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or
purpose of
purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I
and
will
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
on
on
which
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. The County of San Diego Independent Redistricting Commission is officially formed.
Yay.
Okay, now on to agenda item 5, your first order of business. Before we move on to the selection of a chair and vice chair, it would be appropriate for the commission to consider and adopt bylaws and operating procedures. The proposed document was provided to you in advance. The bylaws and operating procedures help to define the purpose and authority of the commission, the commissioner's responsibilities, officer selection, and the conduct of meetings. These are very similar to the interim bylaws that were utilized by the first 8 commissioners for the first few meetings. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, at this time, would entertain a motion to adopt the bylaws and operating procedures.
I motion we adopt the bylaws.
I second that.
Sorry. Excuse me. I found, I don't know if there was a typo, but on Article 1, Section 6, it says commission to adopt a redistricting plan by no later than December 15th. Is that correct? Because I read in the law here it's August 15th.
That is correct. There was an amendment to the law that pushed it out to December 15th because of the delay in receiving the census data. So thank you for reading that. Great,
Sorry.
great question.
Thank you.
Okay. Nope,
Thank you
good
for
question.
clarifying.
Okay, I caught the motion by Commissioner Chen. There were a number of you that seconded it.
Second.
Was that Mr. Larson?
I'll second it if nobody else wants to.
We had seen that Commissioner Chen made the motion and Commissioner Larson appeared to be the first person I saw to second the motion. So
That's fine.
we will go with that if that's okay with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Aaron. See, I
Can
told
you
you.
provide us all with buzzers so we can buzz in at the time?
That would be great. All right, now I will call the roll for the vote and we'll go alphabetically. And if you'll just unmute yourself and either say aye, no, or abstain. We'll begin with Commissioner Boehm.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Katerina.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Commissioner Dostal.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Krugliak.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Pons.
Aye.
Commissioner Russ.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban.
Aye.
Members of the commission, that motion passes unanimously with all commissioners being present and voting aye. Next on your agenda is the selection of chair and vice chair. As defined in the bylaws that you just adopted, the chairperson will convene and preside over regular and special commission meetings and will be the official spokesperson for the commission. The vice chair will act in this capacity in the absence of the chair. So I will preside over the selection of a chair and vice chair. And my thought is that we'll start with the chair first. What we'll do is take nominations for chair and then seek a motion and vote on the chair. So at this time, is there a nomination from the commissioners for a chair?
Andrew, Mr. Potter, before we have that discussion, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So I understand that this vote is to establish a chair for purposes of every meeting of the committee, or I thought somewhere I thought there is a provision that would allow for a rotating chair. And so would it be worth having a discussion as to how to structure the chairmanship of the committee prior to having?
You are correct. There is a provision in the bylaws that does allow for rotation of the chair. And I see Mr. Boehm has his hand up. Commissioner Boehm?
I was about to make the same kind of comment, and I just want to offer it this way. I don't know if we need to have a final discussion today, or what I was going to suggest to amend the motion would be in effect to choose a chair with the understanding that it is in effect an interim chair till we have sufficient information, which my guess will be at our January or February meeting. In other words, this is a little out of order, but just to frame things, I think there's still a lot for us to learn about our actual duties and responsibilities. Personally, I think it might be hard to make an informed decision on a permanent chair, but I have also seen some criticism of other redistricting commissions for having a regularly rotating chair where continuity became an issue. I'm not saying that would not be the case, that would be the case here. I think we could go with that option, but just like the duties, I don't know the right answer myself right now. And I for one would feel comfortable with a motion that allows us to pick a chair, which I think is allowed under the bylaws, with the understanding that we will re-examine the issue in the second or third meeting from now.
I like that idea.
I also concur. I think that that addresses my concern, which is we're not fully aware of sort of the timeline and what the scope of work for the chair and the vice chair would be as far as, you know, the meetings and all that. And so I think that's a good approach, Mr. Boehm.
So this is Frank Pons. Based on what I've read, the limited information, it appears that the chair and the vice chair is more administrative than authoritative. And so there's no more power in the chair or the vice chair than any other council member, as I understand it. So I don't have a problem identifying an individual or a set of individuals to hold those positions, because I don't think the authority vested in those individuals are nothing more than an administrative function. But correct me if I'm wrong. I like the issue of continuity. I'm a little concerned about the issue of rotation, and because it could impact continuity and that whole continuity of thought in the process. So my recommendation is that we proceed with identifying an individual or a set of individuals, and then have a further discussion later if something presents itself that may change the discussion.
So it sounds to me like we're all in agreement on that, at least those who have spoken. I would go ahead and recommend Commissioner Bain as the chairman. He's been serving as the interim. I think he's done a fine job and certainly has a lot of enthusiasm for it. So I will make that nomination.
Second.
I think I would respond to Commissioner Pons's comment by saying that the chair of this body will have substantive authority in setting the agenda of each meeting, primarily, and then secondly, the authority to, at the chair's discretion, determine whether discussion is warranted to be closed, and you know the chair decides when discussion's done and the vote takes place, and the chair decides what the agenda items are. So, I mean, I'm not sure whether you categorize that as administrative or substantive, but those are, you know, that is the authority of the chair.
I understand. So I'm on a learning curve here. Just by reading the literature, the Rosenberg Rules of Order and stuff like that in that literature, maybe there's something different or difficult that I didn't understand. But it sounds like, yes, the authority is vested to convene and or make a proposal and a recommendation. But to me, it doesn't seem like it could be a singular decision. But again, I'm going to defer to you all because my knowledge is limited, but I'm very enthusiastic about this process.
And I'd also add that I think for purposes of engendering public trust in the process, it might be worthwhile for the commission to have a discussion on how to, whether a rotating chair might serve that interest.
I'd like to agree with that and suggest we defer any permanent chair to a decision in February or so, when I think we all understand what's going on a lot better.
I see Commissioner Boehm and Commissioner Garcia both have their hands raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate Commissioner Pons's concern about continuity. And I think that what Commissioner Boehm is proposing, which is that we select a chair and vice chair today for an interim period until such time that we feel like we can revisit the issue, and then perhaps at that point we'll be comfortable with you know, appointing a chair or selecting a chair for the rest of the time, or at that point we may decide that we'll want to rotate it. But it's premature now. I sense, I have a feeling that we may need a little bit more time to know what the right approach is. And so I like the idea of making a decision today with the idea that we'll revisit it in January or February.
So Andrew, do we have to pick a date for when we're going to revisit this decision to put it in the minutes?
We don't, because we don't have, the commission has not adopted a formal meeting schedule yet. So we don't actually have a date. I mean, just giving a general date of 2 to 3 meetings from now, or February, if you want to have a time frame, say the second meeting in February, that would work as well.
The
Okay,
reason,
so it will be up to I take it then the chairman, whoever we elect as an interim, to then revisit that or choose to revisit that and put it on the agenda, correct?
True, correct. Or any one of you at a meeting could say, let's discuss this at the next meeting and bring that up, and then it could be agendized.
We all have the opportunity to
Oops, sorry.
suggest agenda items, correct?
Correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, what was the question?
I was saying that we all have the opportunity to suggest agenda items. And your point, Commissioner Serban, about, the as a chairperson, the ability to set agenda and then conduct the meetings and make those determinations about when discussion is over and when to call a vote is a very, very good point about the authority of the.
So with that understanding, I'd like to clarify my nomination of Commissioner Bain for the interim, or at least potentially interim, position of chair until we revisit the discussion in several meetings.
Second that.
I was trying to say that I think I would feel more comfortable in order to maximize the use of the time between now and then, that we set a date and then we don't have to wonder when this is going to happen. So I would like to suggest that we say by February 15th or something, whichever, so that we know what we're doing between now and then.
could I just?
How about,
Please.
what if we, before we have, I mean, I imagine we're going to have some type of meeting where the primary purpose of the meeting is to solicit input from the public. Whenever that first meeting occurs, that's when we should figure out the rotating chair schedule. Or at least before that first meeting, before that meeting.
I'd like to suggest that I like Commissioner Henson's idea that we have a very clear frame in mind about when. My suggestion would be, assuming we get through the main informational briefs in this meeting and the meeting next Friday, which, Mr. Potter, I think that's the intent, correct?
Yes.
We would then have our next meeting in, say, January. We would have enough information and enough time to have reviewed the scope of work that we could either vote in that meeting or the next meeting. And the only reason, Commissioner Henson, I'm not sure about a date is I think we're going to have to work through some times and dates. I also very much, though, would suggest we all keep in mind Commissioner Pons's earlier comment. I strongly agree. I think anyone could do the chair job on this group. Part of me says a rotating chair would be a good idea. Part of me says it would be good to follow a model where we take up what would amount to subcommittee chairs on specific issues where we have particular talents or skills or interests. And those individuals would be delegated the authority for the meeting where those issues came up. So you could have what amounts to a functional rotation. In the end, I think I'm in agreement with the rest of you. We'll do whatever the consensus is. But I did want to explain that from my point of view, the way to do this would be to collect the information today and at our next meeting, have a discussion at the meeting after that, and then either vote at that meeting or no later than the next meeting, which presumably would be in February at the latest.
So we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Chen for an interim chair, Commissioner Bain, and to revisit that in, do you want to say by February?
Could we just say by February 28th, and that way covered through February, and we presumably will have a meeting in January and a meeting in February. And if we can do it
At
earlier,
least.
I like that.
That works for me.
Okay, and it was seconded by Commissioner Garcia. Are you comfortable with those changes? Yes, okay, great, great. All right, so we have a motion on the floor for Commissioner Boehm to serve as interim chair through February 28th. And I will now call the roll. Commissioner Boehm.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Brown, did I think you are on mute?
I was not unmuted, sorry. Yeah, aye.
Great. All right, Commissioner Katarina.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Commissioner Dostal.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Inman?
Yes.
Aye, great, thank you. Commissioner Krugliak.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Pons.
Aye.
Commissioner Russ.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban.
Aye.
Great. Members of the commission, that motion passes unanimously with all commissioners being present and voting aye. So now we'll move on to the vice chair, and my thought is we'll conduct a similar process for the vice chair. So at this time, I would entertain a nomination for vice chair or a motion if we're ready to go that route.
Well, I would like to nominate Frank Pons. I think his experience, from what I've read, and it's interim, Frank. So don't worry, we can vote you out later if you want. But I nominate Frank Pons.
I second.
Let me just say this, Jack. I've got you down as a B++ to be in one of those positions.
Are there any other nominations? Otherwise, that appeared to me as a motion.
I do nominate, I'm sorry, I nominate Ms. Rosette Garcia as the vice chair.
Okay.
I listened to the prior meetings of the commission, and I was impressed with the participation of all the commissioners, particularly with Commissioner Diaz. So I'd like to nominate her.
Great. Any other nominations for vice chair? So at this point, we have nominations for Commissioner Pons, Commissioner Garcia, and Commissioner Diaz. Is there a motion to select a vice chair from those individuals?
So moved.
For which individual, Mr. Chen?
Oh, I thought we were going to pick all three. I'm sorry, and vote between them.
Mr. Potter, at least according to Rosenberg's rules, and boy, do I so know some Iranian representatives at the UN who would disagree, you can have up to 3 motions on the floor at once.
That is correct.
For convenience sake, I would suggest we take a motion to vote on all 3 at once, if that's agreeable to the commission.
That's what I believed I was motioning, yes.
Okay, so we will begin. So do we want to take each of them individually? Or is the intent as I'm calling the roll for you to indicate which individual you would vote for vice chair?
I think it'd be expedient to say a name for who you're voting for going to the roll call.
Sounds great. All right, Commissioner Boehm.
Can I?
Yes.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I was wondering if Commissioner Pons nominating someone else means he prefers not to have the position. I think that would be helpful to know.
Yes, it's not that I don't want the position, it's just that I think that it would be more beneficial for either Ms. Garcia or the other candidate to have those positions. So can I make a recommendation to deselect or pull myself out of the nomination process just because of that proposal and how I feel about it?
You certainly can.
I'd like to, if the commission's okay with it, can we invite Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Diaz if they'd like to maybe speak? I'd welcome any input from them if they have anything to say.
Actually, I'd like to put my support behind Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you. Thank you for your nomination. I accept, and I will carry out the duties of the vice chair in the interim.
So I'd like to move that we select Commissioner Diaz for vice chair of the commission.
This is Commissioner Serban, second. You beat me to it.
Yeah, my buzzer, I'm ready.
You're on mute.
Fantastic. I was on mute. My own.
In that
error.
case, if I need to, I withdraw my my proposal then.
Got it. Thank you. I will note for the record that we have a motion by Commissioner Garcia with a second by Commissioner Serban for Commissioner Diaz to be vice chair. And I see Mr. Imnan raising his hand.
Yeah, just I guess clarification. So we talked about rotating or an interim for the chair. Or is this just an up-down vote for a vice chair for the duration? Just clarification.
Oh, can I suggest a friendly amendment to the motion then to amend the motion to reflect similar language to the motion that we passed for the chair?
Yes, and I
With
see
regard to the interim.
I see Commissioner Garcia, who made the motion, nodding and raising a thumb. So this will be an interim selection with the same language that we had for the chair selection. Okay, with that, Commissioner Bain, your vote, please.
With the understanding that Commissioner Pons and Garcia are first in line for additional duties, aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Katerina.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Commissioner Dostal.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Krugliak.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Pons.
Aye.
Commissioner Russ.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban.
Aye.
Commissioners, that motion passes unanimously with all commissioners being present and voting aye. Congratulations to our interim chair and vice chair. Chair Boehm, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you would like, we can take a 5-minute recess and I will email you a script, or we can just keep moving along and I'll email it as we go. It's up to you.
What's the feeling in the commission? Do you want a 5-minute break anyway? Or we can push ahead. All right, let's take 5 minutes and we will be back that much quicker, I promise.
Okay, we will be on recess. We will reconvene at 3:03 according to my clock.
Okay, by my count, we're at 3:03. And I think we have everyone back. Commissioner Kugliak, I think, is still coming. Very good. I want to offer my thanks again to everyone for a really good discussion. That, I think, was the most important thing of what we just did. And before we move on, I will once again offer thanks to Mr. Potter for getting us off to a good start, for taking the chair, and for helping us continue to do this incredibly important work and give us all the staffing and support we need. All right, so moving on. The next item on the agenda is non-agenda public communication speakers. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission on subject matters within the committee's jurisdiction, but not on a particular item on today's agenda. The only action the commission may take on this is a referral to staff. Additionally, before we begin, I just want to remind that any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the redistricting website, www.sandiegocounty.gov/redistricting. Individuals that wish to speak must submit an online request to speak. Mr. Potter, do we have speakers for today?
We have no requests under public communication this afternoon.
Very good. And I'll just, because it's always so important, I'll just make absolutely sure, but I don't see anyone who's come in. We don't have any last minute requests.
We do
Very
not.
excellent. So we will move on. The next item is the approval of the minutes from the November 20th, 2020 regular meeting. For this, we'll need a motion for approval in a second. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
Good. Then see the motion by Commissioner Diaz and seconded by Commissioner Larson.
Yeah, yeah, David, one thing I wanted to make a correction to on item 5, the very last motion to actually bring these other 6 commissioners on board. It did not give the results of that motion. That is the vote. So I would.
You are correct. Yes, thank
yeah,
you. We will make that correction to list all of the ayes. That motion was unanimous. Thank you for catching that.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good.
Good. Commissioner Russ, you're comfortable if we go ahead and approve it with the understanding that will be added and corrected?
Absolutely.
Right. Any further discussion? Thank you for that, by the way. Very good. Mr. Potter, could you please call the roll for the vote?
Thank you. Commissioner Bain.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Katarina.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Diaz.
Aye.
Commissioner Dostal.
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia.
Should I abstain? Do I approve these minutes?
It is okay for those that were not present. It is okay to vote to approve the minutes because essentially your vote declares the minutes approved.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Krugliak.
Aye.
Commissioner Larson.
Aye.
Commissioner Pons.
Aye.
Commissioner Russ.
Aye.
Commissioner Serban.
I'm sorry, I didn't review the minutes. I didn't realize I would be able to vote on them since I didn't attend the last meeting, so I'll abstain.
Okay, great. Mr. Chair, that motion passes with Commissioner Serban abstaining, all other commissioners being present and voting aye.
Very good. Thank you for that. And before we leave that item, Mr. Potter, am I correct that the session is recorded and viewable on the website?
It is. You're correct.
So for those of you interested, please feel free. The meeting was mainly, as you'll see from the minutes, about the selection to round out the commission, but there was certainly some other material discussed. So please feel free to review that as you think about how we proceed with our work. Very good. So we'll move on now to item 9, introduction of commission counsel legal representation. This is an informational item, although we can certainly have discussion about it afterwards. But for right now, let me turn it over to Mr. Potter to introduce the legal team.
Thank you. For the benefit of the full commission, I am pleased to introduce the individuals that will be serving as legal counsel to the commission. And that's Marguerite Leone and Hillary Gibson. They are both from the law firm Nielsen, Merksheimer, Parinello, Gross, and Leone. Both Ms. Leone and Ms. Gibson specialize in voting rights, redistricting, the Brown Act. In fact, they were involved in drafting the state rules and have worked with many entities on the very issue that this commission will be responsible for handling. They, as I said earlier, they really are the experts statewide. Marguerite and Hillary will go into more details about their experience. However, before they do that, I want to address some questions about the selection process for legal counsel that were brought up by members of the public at previous meetings. Staff looked into several options for retaining legal counsel for the commission, and it was important to ensure that the commission had legal support from its inception, beginning with the first meeting of the 8 commissioners on November 9th. The elections code that governs this commission's responsibilities requires that the county provide for reasonable funding and staffing for the commission. After a thorough review of options to provide legal counsel to the commission, the Office of County Counsel identified Nielsen, Merksheimer, Parinello, Gross, and Leone as the firm that had the most extensive experience in the area of redistricting. They had familiarity with the county since Marguerite assisted the county in 2011 and had the capacity to support this commission. In compliance with the elections code, the county has provided an excellent team of staff that will be supporting the commission's work, and this team includes the legal representation. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Marguerite and Hillary to present an overview of their experience so you and the public have a chance to get to know them. After their presentation, the commission may ask questions, and then we'll hear from any members of the public that might have requested to speak on this item. As the chair indicated, this is an informational item, so there's no action necessary. With that, I will turn it over to Marguerite and Hillary.
And I am off of mute, and Andrew, thank you so very much. I appreciate the kind words. I'm extremely pleased, Hillary and I, to have been selected by County Council's office to represent you. And we are looking forward to working together. We have been working with staff now for a month or more. It is the A team. And we are impressed with them and have developed a very confidential and comfortable working relationship. And we're looking forward to developing that with all of you as we go forward together. I provided for you and for the public a summary of some of our redistricting and voting rights experience. It is the area of law where I have devoted most of my time as an attorney, and that has been over the last 40 years. My very first case was a case that has finally broken the surface, or the issue that has finally broken the surface of redistricting consciousness nationwide. I was one of the attorneys on the very first partisan gerrymandering case that ever came through the federal courts. I have significant experience not only with redistricting, voting rights, and districting, but also commissions. I provided legal counsel to the group that drafted Propositions 11 and 20 for the State Redistricting Commission. I understand the intent and the purpose of the commissions, which is to put the drawing of district lines in the hands of the represented, not the representatives, by making them both the decision makers and by opening the process to a expanded opportunity for public participation. And not only do I understand the intent of commissions, and I have worked with commissions, but I understand the process of redistricting thoroughly. We have had an opportunity once this movement towards redistricting by commission took fire, not only in California, but nationwide, to defend the use of the commission process before the United States Supreme Court when that Arizona commission was challenged. And we intervened into that. We participated in that litigation as amicus curiae on behalf of the proponents of the California Commission. And in the course of that representation, we had the interesting experience of being able to mine literature from the 18th century as to what our forefathers meant by legislature when they placed the process of elections in the hands of the state legislatures. We were, interestingly enough, quoted by the Supreme Court. Since 2010, we have represented, I'm not going to go back as far as I could, but we have represented really 100 jurisdictions or more in various aspects of redistricting. I have worked with, we work almost exclusively on the side of public entities. We've worked with commissions. We have worked with legislative bodies. We have, our work has resulted in the implementation of numerous redistrictings and numerous initial districtings. Only one of our plans was ever challenged, and we successfully defended that one. Our team has also specific skills that we bring to the representation of our clients. We are all as a legal team GIS trained. We understand the data, we have litigated the data, we know it thoroughly, we know its strengths and its weaknesses. We know how it can be manipulated, but we also know how it can be enlightened with public testimony. Data is numbers on a page. What counts are the people behind the numbers. And I want to just give you a very tiny example of this, and you're going to be grappling with these sorts of issues yourself. I worked with the City Council of the City of Fremont in its recent establishments of districts. And if you look at the census and the ACS data, they will tell you that Fremont is a majority Asian city. But when you look at that term Asian in the census, which lumps all nationalities, many nationalities under that, it doesn't tell the full story. And through the process of the redistricting and the public hearings, the needs of the Afghani community welled forth, and we were able to address them in the districting, along with the competing, not necessarily competing, but co-equal interests of the Chinese community. But if you look at the data, it was all under Asian. So it was the type of public involvement and public testimony necessary to enlighten the data. We've drawn many plans ourselves. We are able to take a plan and look at it as GIS professionals as well as lawyers. We are finally litigators. There have been many jurisdictions that have brought their problems to us, either with a change to district elections or a redistricting, and we have provided competent, knowledgeable legal defense. So what does that bring to the commission? We are well aware where the landmines are and are prepared to work with you to expand opportunities for you to do your job. It's not our job to limit what you can do. Within the bounds of the law, we want to give you all possible options. And then when you make your choice, we will be available to defend that in a knowledgeable way and guide you through the process in a way that you have the very best chance of having your plan defended. Now, I've given you a lot of information about us. I didn't want to repeat that here, but I'm very happy to answer any of your questions. I do want to introduce my colleague, Hillary Gibson, before we move on. Hillary has worked with me for over 10 years on redistricting. She is an expert in issues called retrogression and was key in working with the United States Department of Justice in working towards bailout of certain jurisdictions from the Section 5 regime that used to apply to jurisdictions. Bailout was always contemplated as part of the process and was important to its constitutionality. What we were able to do working with the Campaign Legal Center was to bring that to fruition in Washington, DC, and bail out one of our major California counties. Hillary has also worked with me on redistricting, needless to say. But the most important thing about, or one of the most important aspects that Hillary brings is her vast knowledge of the Political Reform Act and conflict of interest issues. And Hillary, if you could address some of that in your election law background, it would be helpful.
Sure. So as Marguerite mentioned, I've worked with her for many years on the firm's very extensive redistricting practice and voting rights practice. And I also work with many public entity clients and private clients as well on advising them as to public ethics laws, which include, as relevant to the commission, the Brown Act, which we're going to cover today in some detail, conflict of interest laws, which you guys are all probably at least nominally familiar with at this point, given the Form 700 requirement, and various other matters that may come up in the realm of public ethics and the Political Reform Act for members of public bodies. And so, I will, Marguerite also has expertise in those areas, but we will work together to provide that expertise to the commission as well.
Thank you, Hillary. And Chair Bain, I'll turn it back to you because we're here for you to get to know us and hopefully for us to get to know you a bit too.
Thank you very much. Before we take questions, I want to suggest that we have any technical or legal questions to clarify what's already been said first, just so we're all on the same page. Then move to any public comments, then have a discussion by the commission. So before I call on, I saw Commissioner Dostal's hand already up. Mr. Potter, do we have any requests for public statements during this?
There are no requests to speak on this item, Chair Bain.
Great. So I would encourage some technical questions first, but if we need to go directly into substantive discussion, that's fine. Commissioner Dostal?
Thank you. I'm not sure what a technical question is, so I'll just go ahead.
Fair enough.
First of all, thank you. You're all, obviously your firm and you individually are very impressive. My question is just very general of the council's role in this. It's just, I'm unfamiliar with the process generally. So I was just wondering if you could explain, are you at every meeting? Do you, what is your role? Are you there for questions or?
Thank you, Commissioner Dostal. I don't think you're going to need both of us at every meeting, but one of us will be at every meeting and guide matters such as the conduct of the meeting, Brown Act, those sorts of nuts and bolts matters, acting as your general counsel, so to speak, without any specific focus on the redistricting or the voting rights issues. When those issues come up, we will be available to provide legal guidance to you and the parameters of the law that are guiding what you do. We have had so many years of experience doing that we're hoping we can bring to you also suggestions about approaching problems that we have learned from a different process that could help you get through tight areas. So what we want to bring is not only law. Yes, you can do this. No, you can't. That's not our focus. We want to bring you, yes, competence in the law, but also options and experience to open up your ability to decide how to approach this process.
And as Marguerite noted, we've advised many public bodies on, including commissions, on redistricting matters, and so that we've got particular expertise. The redistricting commission may encounter Brown Act issues, conflict of interest issues, political reform issues that are very specific to or kind of colored by the particular context of the fact that you are acting as this kind of limited purpose redistricting committee. And our background gives us the expertise to help you through that. And, we've worked through that with other jurisdictions many times before.
Let's take Commissioner Hanson and then Commissioner Serban. Commissioner Hanson.
Thanks. Your example from Fremont was really enlightening to me. I know you worked with the County of San Diego 10 years ago. Can you tell us about any of the roadblocks that came up at that time and that might give us a hint as to what we are about to deal with this time?
Oh,
sorry.
What an interesting question. And, it might be interesting to have a session on the background in San Diego County. A couple of it, let me mention a couple of very interesting aspects of the county. Number one is, of course, the population concentration on the coast. And yet the resources of the counties are extremely diverse, going to the east, and the eastern part of the county could actually be a different country. And making sure that the redistricting empowers all sectors of the county is a challenge. All right. It would be very interesting and very easy to have this county controlled by the city of San Diego. And that may not serve the county in terms of proper representation in the long run. The resources of this county in population and in geography are vast. And we want to empower that. We don't want to restrict that. So that's one thing, the population challenges. And also, there are new and growing communities in the county that we did not have in the 2010 redistricting. And these are expatriate and some refugee communities from our Middle Eastern areas that have found a receptive and comfortable home in San Diego. And these communities are going to get buried in these large categories of people where the census drops. You get to mark off one of 5 or 6 nationalities or ethnicities on the census. We're going to do a full session on the census so that you thoroughly understand what it's about. But these communities that are very cohesive will get drowned in that and perhaps even split up by that unless their voice wells forward. So I think we're going to have to be looking quite a bit beneath the numbers, and more so perhaps even than we did in 2010.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Serban.
Thank you, Chair Beam, and welcome to Council. I look forward to working with Council as this process continues. And just to make sure to clarify that I heard what you said. It sounded like what you said was the lessons learned from the last county process in this was first the challenge of empowering all aspects of the county when the city of San Diego is easily the kind of the big gorilla and the silverback in the room. And then the other challenge it sounded like was that there are these growing new communities in the county that are getting aggregated into these larger data sets. And so I think it's good to recognize those two challenges. What I wanted to ask you though is in listening to the prior public comment, I wanted to ask, so first, I want to confirm that it was county staff selected council for this body. Is that correct?
Yes, I was elected by county council.
Okay, and then so there was some concern about that, and I guess I just wanted to confirm that your opinion is that that no legal issues presented by county council by county staff selecting this body's council rather than this body making that selection itself.
Very good question, Commissioner Serban. There is no conflict of interest, and the law itself requires the county to provide staff for you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because yes, I mean, I very much appreciate that we have the service of counsel. So, and I did want to just address quickly that concern from the public. And then I guess maybe a technical question. I don't know if I had seen this anywhere, but I assume that as commissioners, we are indemnified against any claims for any of our conduct that we undertake within the scope of our duties as commissioners, correct?
This would be your insurance requirements. You are certainly protected by the law. in the civil code, and the county is going to defend you insofar as you are going to make a decision on a plan. If you end up committing a tortious act as a commissioner, I don't see how that can be, Commissioner Serban. I would have to look at the risk management aspects of that through the county processes. And I'm not prepared to address that aspect, but certainly within your official duties, you would be defended.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Commissioner Katharina.
So I just wanted to, oh, well, first, thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. Your firm is quite experienced, and I'm excited to be working with you both. I kind of have, I think, probably what David was referring to as more of the technical questions. So are we your employer, or is the county? I'm just trying to get a feel for the contractual relationship. Is it with us? Is it with the county? And how does that, and if any way, does that reflect on the commission itself?
Okay, my contract, my client is you. My ethical obligations run to you. We were expressly hired with you as the client, and my report is actually Andrew. The county council's been very hands-off, other than to negotiate the contract with me. And I have had no communication whatsoever with any supervisor or board. There is not a conflict of interest here. There is compliance with the law, and I am your attorney. My only ethical obligations and my duty of loyalty runs to you.
Thank you for clarifying that. And just one quick follow-up. So when we're looking at this, so does the payment, this is again the technical side, do we pay you, does that come out of our budget, or does that come out of the budget of the services provided by the county?
You know, Commissioner Katerina, I believe we are going to have I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, Andrew and Erin, but we're going to have a presentation for you on budgeting. I do believe that we are coming out of your budget. Thank you. I see a nod of the head there. And we are prepared to, since that's a contractual term and our contract, there's a limit on what we can charge. And there's an agreement on hourly rates. And we are prepared to reveal that to you in a confidential memo. And you're not going to be seeing two of us at a meeting unless absolutely required. We're very sensitive to that.
Good questions.
Commissioner Katerina, does that complete your questions on that? Good. Other questions? I'm having trouble with the electronic hand, so I'll go by visual. Commissioner Larson, then Commissioner Diaz. Commissioner Larson, who's on mute?
Yes, well, Leon, I really enjoyed your presentation. I guess I have two questions. A contract was mentioned between you and the county. Can we see a copy of that contract in confidence, of course? And secondly,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah. And secondly, I noted that you're a Northern California firm. Where are you personally based?
I am sitting in my home office right now in Marin County, but my office is also in Marin County, and we have an office in Sacramento. And Andrew, I don't want to jump the gun on this, but I believe we can share the contract with you in confidence, or at least the key provisions. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes, I think my question was already addressed about the contract. Thank you.
I really should be saying Vice Chair Diaz. I'm sorry about that. Good. Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Good. So more because I do have to worry about the process. Ms. Leone, I just want to make sure. So since we'll have you or Ms. Gibson at each meeting, we can always, if we have a question, submit it during a meeting, and it's reasonable to expect an answer or reply or a comment back from you and your colleagues at the next meeting, correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Good. So I'd encourage everyone to keep that in mind, both on specific presentations, but even more as we hear from the public, as you have your own questions and comments. Let's air them with everyone together as quickly as we can once they're developed, so that we can keep the dialogue and the information flowing. Commissioner Serban.
Who's taking minutes?
That is myself and Aaron Demarest. We
Okay.
are responsible for taking the minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Any other questions or comments on this item? Very good, because I'm sure we're going to have many more as we go. But thanks to both of you, Ms. Leone and Ms. Gibson, much appreciated. With that, unless I see objection, we'll move on to the next item. Very good. Moving on, I think the next agenda item is the Brown Act. There we go. To be presented, did I understand right, by Ms. Gibson?
That's right.
Correct. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so we will, we've got a lot of information in this presentation. We're going to go through it pretty quickly to kind of keep on track with our meeting schedule as much as possible. And the purpose is to just give the commission an overview of the requirements under the Brown Act. You know, there's a lot there. There's a lot of nuance. We could discuss it for many hours. We obviously don't have the time to do that. And that's probably not something everyone's particularly interested in doing this afternoon. So we are, the idea is to give people just a kind of idea of the general goals and purposes of the Brown Act, and then the potential pitfalls to be aware of and things to avoid as you conduct your business as a public body.
Ms. Gibson, can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Yes, of course.
I don't think this was sent around. Can we have this sent around to the commissioners individually, just so they have it as a resource?
Yes, I can do that right now. Yep. And we will also be posting it online for members of the public. It will be posted online after the meeting.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, so Erin, can you skip to the next slide? Thank you so much. So the major goal of the Brown Act is transparency, and is to create public access to the legislative body here. That's public access to meetings, public access to the commission's deliberations, the ability of the public to participate in discussions about commission business, and public access to documents that are relevant to the commission. So Chair Boehm's last comment was well placed, very timely. The part of the Brown Act requirement is to make sure that the public can get to these documents that a majority of the commission has access to. This is just, we won't read every word of this in the interest of moving through quickly, but this is just to give the commission an idea of where these transparency goals and requirements come from. The intent of the legislation is to facilitate the public's accessibility to the legislative body's deliberation, and that you are representatives of the public, you serve the public, and therefore the public should have access and the ability to participate in your business. The Brown Act is statutory as well as constitutional. The constitutional language is, very similar to the statutory language we just saw, and that, that both the Constitution and the statutory provisions, which kind of add more meat to the constitutional language, are geared towards facilitating public access and transparency. The basic rule of the Brown Act that all of these kind of more specific requirements that we are going to talk about are intended to facilitate is the openness of public meetings, and that the commission, no legislative body, the commission included, shall not conduct business in secret, and that everything shall be open and accessible to the public, and all of the meeting requirements, the agenda requirements, all of that is geared towards this main and basic goal of open public meetings and open discussion of the commission's business. So this is, you can see now how seriously the Brown Act takes this goal of transparency, because we've given you 4 slides on it. But this is, the language before, it was technical. It was just meant to illustrate that, this appears multiple places in California law. It's a very well-established set of rules. But we've underlined these terms here because these are the things we're going to walk through in a little bit more detail of the components of this basic rule, that meetings of a legislative body are open and public. And all of those, what is a meeting, who qualifies as a legislative body, and what are the parameters of open and public are things that we're going to discuss in further detail. And it's important to note that exceptions to this general rule are very limited and are pretty specific. And so for the most part, when in doubt, assume that things happen, the business has to be conducted in public, and ask before anything is done out of the public eye or not at a public meeting. So who is a legislative body subject to the Brown Act is a term of art. There is statutory definitional language, and Aaron, if you could click through that just so everything kind of shows up on the screen at once. It's the governing body of a local agency. That's the thing people are most familiar with, right? Your city council, your board of supervisor, those kind of bodies. Also commissions, committees, boards, that are permanent or have temporary decision-making authority, and governing bodies of private organizations under certain circumstances that are specified by law. For your purposes, and Aaron, if you could go to the next slide on this, and I apologize to Aaron because I should have just been doing this myself, but I was a little concerned about my own technical difficulties that I have sometimes. This is an easy question with respect to the IRC, because the statutory provisions, the legislation that gives the IRC its authority and creates the IRC, specifies that the commission is subject to the Brown Act. So we don't have to do any sort of thinking about whether the commission is a Brown Act body. It's right there in the law. Aaron, if you could go to the next slide. Not a legislative body is still important and still something that may come up from time to time, because temporary advisory committees that are composed solely of less than a quorum of the legislative body, that serve a limited or single purpose, these are often called ad hoc committees, are not Brown Act bodies. And so from time to time, it may make sense for the commission to designate a smaller subcommittee, an ad hoc subcommittee, to tackle offline a particular and discrete issue, just for the purpose of being able to resolve something efficiently, and bring something back, bring a recommendation or further considerations back to the full commission. There are certain circumstances in which a standing less than majority committee may become a Brown Act committee. You will see that with these, often board of supervisors or city councils have kind of standing committees to address ongoing issues, environmental committees that meet on a regular basis pursuant to a normal schedule. Those will become Brown Act committees. That's not something the commission is likely to encounter given your already limited purpose that you have been convened for. This is one of the most important things that we're going to talk about today. You know, we'll go through the definition of a meeting, but the main kind of thing that we'll discuss here and that the commission should be mindful of are the things that are not obvious to everyone that it might be a meeting. So a meeting, by definition, by statute, is when a majority of the members of the body are present at the same time and place to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action. So it's not just a vote. It's a discussion as well on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. The very easy example of a meeting is what we're all doing right now, right? When you've got a formal scheduled meeting and everyone's in attendance and we've got an agenda and we're all discussing it, everyone knows that's a meeting. The kind of more subtle things that happen are where the potential pitfalls really are. In terms of what constitutes a meeting and therefore what must be done in public and cannot be done informally and out of the public eye. Serial meetings are really the most kind of common example of when we have a Brown Act violation that occurs. And I will say that most Brown Act violations that we see are totally inadvertent. I mean, there is, it's not about an attempt of public officials to circumvent the Brown Act or to specifically and purposefully keep things out of the public eye. It's people doing something that seems benign and innocuous, but it does violate the public meeting requirement inadvertently. And, so that's why we kind of will devote the majority of our energy and have several slides on this issue for the commission. A serial meeting is when one commission member may reach out to someone else who may then reach out to somebody else, and where you started with not a quorum, not a majority of the commissioners discussing something, all of a sudden you have, through no kind of intent of the person who initiated the chain communication, you all of a sudden have a majority of the members that are discussing something in private and outside of a publicly noticed public meeting. So the kind of example of it that we have up here is that you have Commissioner A contacts, usually this happens by email, but it can happen by phone call, contacts member B, then member B contacts member C, and then member C contacts member D. And all of a sudden, this message, this game of telephone has happened, if you will, and this message has been relayed to a majority of the commission. That's a meeting, even though it doesn't feel like a meeting. And, it's not what we would sort of just common sense think of as being a meeting. It is a meeting that is covered by the Brown Act and is something that the commission needs to be very mindful of and strive to avoid, because it will result in a Brown Act violation. The hub and spoke is just sort of a different variation of that chain serial meeting where you've got kind of one commissioner that is then reaching out individually, but to multiple commissioners and resulting in a majority of the commissioners being contacted and having some discussion on a particular item that's commission business. An intermediary it's the same idea. These are all just kind of variations of the general concept of serial meetings, but an intermediary, someone that's not a commissioner, contacts a majority of members and shares information, relays information between those members. So these are all things that you should be on the lookout for and should kind of make your antenna go up when you see email communications, a reply all. I think that's on the next slide, Erin, if you could go to the next slide. When you see this kind of stuff, you should kind of go, okay, time out. Do we have a Brown Act problem here? And the baseline, which is why we kind of spent so many slides on that at the beginning, is that in public. You should be, the Brown Act requires at base, aside from all of these kind of nuanced and technical requirements, the commission to conduct its business in public. So the serial meetings most often occur through the use of, they can occur via face-to-face conversations, which not a lot of people are having these days. So that may make things easier in some respects, but face-to-face conversations, phone conversations, but technology really is the kind of, it makes these serial meetings very easy. It's very easy for them to occur very inadvertently, right? Emails, text messages, social media posts, comments on these posts. That's one that it's, worth kind of discussing a little bit more what that might look like. So, there's a Facebook post and there's a lively discussion going on in that Facebook post about the redistricting commission and the business of the commission. And, Commissioner A kind of weighs in and puts a comment on it, and Commissioner B likes that comment, and Commissioner C replies to it and has something to say, and there's a discussion that goes on, and all of a sudden a majority of the commission members have commented on this. That's a discussion, and that's a discussion that violates the Brown Act, and all of a sudden you've got a meeting. And, so technology in many ways makes it a requirement that everyone be much more diligent, because it can happen very fast and it can happen very inadvertently. Aaron, if you could skip to the next slide. We've got just a little more information about that, some of which we've just already talked about. The reply all is another thing that, happens. So you get somebody, a member of the public, sends an email and copies all of the commissioners individually, and then one of the commissioners replies all, and there's correspondence then now that's happening, and all of a sudden you've got a meeting via an email and via reply all in an email. So just, those are just a couple of examples, but those are ways that it kind of most frequently happens, and things for the commission to just be very aware of. And, before you hit send on something, or before you comment on something, or, give a thumbs up emoji or whatever it is, just kind of take that pause to think what's going on here. And is this a potential Brown Act violation? And the answer, may very well be yes.
Hillary, if I could just jump in on that real quick. This is what Hillary talked about in terms of the reply all, which is the reason why when we send communication to all of the commissioners, we will BCC all of you, just so that there isn't any issues with somebody accidentally hitting reply all. So that's why you don't see all of your emails there, your email addresses, and that's why we BCC everybody, just to protect you from that.
And that's a great point. Staff, legal counsel, all of us involved are going to be very cognizant of that. Members of the public will not be. And so there will be situations where, you commissioners will be the ones that need to be diligent about that and making sure that that doesn't become an issue. Even so, email, even when there's no violation, even when there's no Brown Act problem, it's kind of, it's one-on-one, someone reaches out to you individually and you reply back. Public bodies have started banning the practice of commissioners replying to emails, sending text messages, commenting on blogs, social media, what have you, from the dais. It often creates a perception that people don't like, that there's some kind of back channel or off the record communication going on in a venue that should very well be public. Best practice is just don't do it. The commission doesn't necessarily have a policy against that, although the bylaws do have a policy about ex parte communications, and you can review that in more detail in the bylaws. But basically it is, if you receive an ex parte communication, which is just an off the record communication from a member of the public, they shoot you an email, they send you a text, they send you a letter, what have you, that you disclose that to staff, so staff can keep a log of that and make that information public, just with an eye towards further facilitating the transparency of the commission's business. So there are, you know, the Brown Act, it regulates the commission's communications with each other from with the a majority of the members of the legislative body. County staff can have some communication with commissioners that is not subject to the Brown Act. And again, we flagged this reply all here, which Andrew, you know, and most, it's kind of a just general best practice for staff that is working with a public body to do this. But staff will be very cognizant of the Brown Act requirements when communicating with you to make sure that we don't invite a Brown Act violation. This is a, you know, a set of exceptions that, because of, well, two things really, because of the commission's limited purpose and the fact that you are going to be convened for a limited period of time, but also because of the social distancing, you know, restrictions that we are all living under right now are unlikely to be an issue for the most part with these exceptions. But maybe things, you know, people will do things virtually or participate in things virtually. But there are exceptions to what constitutes a meeting. Just because you guys are physically in the same place at the same time doesn't mean that you necessarily have a Brown Act violation. So if a majority of the commission members were to attend an open and publicized conference, community forum, a meeting of another legislative body, you know, such as a city council, board of supervisors, something purely social, which I'm sure we'd all love to do right now. That does not in and of itself, just because you are physically in the same place at the same time, constitute a Brown Act violation if, and there's a big kind of, you know, but here, which is that you don't discuss commission business, things that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the IRC. So that means if you do, you know, you were to attend a conference on something of interest to a majority of the commission members, and you're all there and you're kind of listening to other presentations, you can't then over lunch say, geez, guys, what about that meeting that we had last week? And, you know, wasn't it interesting, that public comment? And you know, what do you think we're going to do about that? That now you have a Brown Act violation. So just because you are physically present in a context that you're allowed to be present in without complying with Brown Act requirements, you still can't discuss the commission's business outside of a publicly noticed meeting.
Hillary, can I ask a clarifying question on that topic?
Sure.
So you mean to say that commissioners can't discuss the commission business between ourselves? Are we free to discuss commission business among other attendees? Or with other attendees?
So that if you are talking to, you know, a member of the public who is not a IRC member, and you're saying, yeah, you know, the commission minutes are online. Oh, you observed the meeting. You know, yes, we are dealing with these things. That's not a Brown Act violation because you don't have a majority of the commission discussing commission business.
Right. Okay.
Now, that is an ex parte communication
Right.
that would then be subject to the bylaws, and that you would be required by those bylaws to disclose to staff for disclosure to the public, but it's not a Brown Act violation.
Right.
So we will just kind of skim over this because the current situation where the commission, all public bodies, have to conduct their business remotely is suspending some of these requirements. So suffice it to say that the Brown Act generally has a relatively formal process in place for legislative bodies to meet remotely and to conduct business by teleconferencing. It is, you know, the idea is that the baseline, the general protocol is going to be for legislative bodies to meet at a regular and specified and public location in person. But Aaron, if you'll skip to the next slide, we've got some information here about how COVID is impacting the Brown Act, you know, in the same way it's impacting almost every aspect of our lives. The executive order, one of the executive orders that deals with COVID-19, allows public meetings to be held by video teleconference or other electronic means. It suspends some of the formalities for holding meetings by teleconference, which are listed there. But there are still requirements to comply with various aspects of the Brown Act, even though things are being done remotely. And Aaron, if you could skip to the next slide on that. This is just, you know, kind of interesting to note that the legislation that specifically, the implementing legislation for the IRC, because it was amended recently, it contemplates this and contemplates that things will be done remotely, specifically with respect to the IRC's public meetings. So if you could skip to the next one, Aaron, thank you. It is so what's being suspended by these executive orders is really some of the formalities and things that require people to say, even though they're conducting the meetings by teleconference, say where they physically are located, or where, you know, required members of the commission to kind of physically be within the county, some of those kind of things. The important transparency aspects of the Brown Act are not suspended. Public meetings still have to be noticed and posted within the normal timeframes. Information still has to be provided to the public about how they can observe and participate in the meetings. And the commission still has to advertise and give people information about how to resolve and provide reasonable accommodations from an ADA perspective. And you guys will note that that's on your agendas. There's information there about how, you know, what people should do if they need accommodations. And the elections code provision that is the implementing legislation, we'll talk about this more on the next slide, has some specific language that says that the commission should provide possibilities for in-person participation to the extent possible. That to the extent possible is important here. Because this is a moving target, and what may have been possible in terms of in-person 2 weeks ago is not possible now, right? And this is something that is changing rapidly and constantly, and none of us know where we're going to find ourselves tomorrow, let alone 3 or 6 months from now. So this is something that we will obviously keep a very close eye on as we move through this process. The legislation provides some examples of how in-person participation could occur in the age of social distancing, setting up multiple rooms with AV connections, allowing community members to make individual appointments, while also providing PPE, holding hearings in outdoor spaces. Right now, we are under a very restrictive version of the shelter-in-place orders that we have been under since March. So this is, that extent possible language is not going to apply right at the present moment. But again, things are changing, and we will be continuously evaluating this and discussing this as we move through the redistricting process. So the commission, the Brown Act requires the commission to hold regular meetings on a regular schedule, and the agendas to be posted at least 72 hours in advance. The commission will, at an upcoming meeting, agree upon a regular meeting schedule in order to comply with that requirement, and staff will take care of making sure that the notice and agenda requirements are complied with. The agenda will have to include a brief general description of items to be discussed or acted upon, specify the time and location of the meeting, and be posted in a location that's freely accessible. In this case, it's going to be the website, to make sure that members of the public can very easily access those meetings, including information about how to attend virtually those meetings. Special meetings can be called by the chairperson or a majority of the commission members. There are still notice and agenda requirements, but they are going to be shorter. And that's just with an eye towards the fact that special meetings are typically necessitated by the fact that something urgent has come up and it can't wait till the next regularly scheduled general meeting. So there's still notice and agenda requirements that have to be complied with. They can just be complied with more quickly in the case of a special meeting. Again, just with the view that the main goal of the Brown Act is to give the public the opportunity to meaningfully participate in the process. The general rule is that there is to be no action or even discussion on items that are not posted on the agenda. So you will hear from time to time, the public can come and comment on non-agenda items, or they will comment on agenda items and ask or bring something up that is kind of not strictly related to that agenda item. And you will hear from time to time us or staff or members of the commission say, thank you for that comment. We'll take it into consideration. It's not on the agenda, and we can bring it back for discussion. The commission can specifically request a particular item that's not on the agenda to be brought back for discussion at a further meeting, or staff to look into it further. But the comment on those non-agenda items should be very minimal and limited in order to not run afoul of these provisions. So that we'll just leave this up here for a second, but that's, we've already covered this, which is that the commissioners can react to non-agenda items. They are, they will be brought up by members of the public, but the reaction should be very limited. Closed session meetings are meetings that the commission may have outside of the public view. They are closed session meetings can be had pursuant to very specific justifications, and those justifications are they're very narrowly tailored. And so it's a limited list, which you see up here on the screen, and it is a the kind of analysis of what falls within those already limited categories is also narrowly construed. So the opportunities to go into closed session don't come up very frequently. This is kind of what I was getting at before when we were talking about our experience and our firm's experience. For you guys, many of these closed session matters are just not going to be applicable because you are a limited purpose committee. You're very unlikely to be dealing with real estate negotiations, right? Or the security of public buildings, things of that nature. Litigation, though, you might be dealing with, right? And so our focus in advising you on the Brown Act requirements and how you comply with them and when you can go into closed session is, probably we're not going to be dealing with all of these categories on here. We mentioned this briefly, and there's, but it bears repeating, especially since we are conducting meetings in a sort of in a novel way that is not, many people are not used to. The meetings must be accessible per ADA. The commission must provide reasonable accommodations. There is information about that on the agendas to make sure that people are aware of that and able to request those accommodations if they need them. And the public's rights under the Brown Act are broad, and they are, the public has a right to attend meetings without, saying who they are, providing information, other information about kind of their business there. The public has a right to record the meetings. The meetings are already being recorded, so that kind of makes that item easier. And the public has a right to address the commission on each item of business on the agenda and any matter not on the agenda. so long as it's relevant to the IRC's business. The IRC may impose reasonable time limits on public comment. The IRC has done that via the bylaws, and there is some flexibility to change that time limit, as may be needed or appropriate under the circumstances, so long as it's done in a way that is equitable to the various members of the public that want to participate in something. And that's all specified in the bylaws as well. The top one is a big one and is the thing that often makes public service uncomfortable, but it is a very important component of the Brown Act, that the public has a right to criticize the commission, and the commission cannot restrict public comment, stop public comment, just because it is not necessarily friendly. The public can also inspect and obtain documents that are commission documents. So the assumption should be, unless otherwise specified, that documents that are circulating, that are given to you, are going to be accessible to the public as well. And this is, just FYI, but a place that we do not expect to find ourselves. But if there is a Brown Act violation, there are remedies for the public that they can pursue. The commission has the opportunity to cure Brown Act violations, which that's the course of action if there's an inadvertent Brown Act violation, which is to take something that was done outside of a public meeting, outside of the public eye, and make it public. But the public, if the commission does not take that course of action or pursue that remedy on its own, that's a remedy that the public can pursue. The public can also pursue a civil action to stop future violations, to invalidate past action of the commission that was taken in violation of the Brown Act, and in some cases, recover attorney's fees and costs. There are criminal penalties that's getting down a road of something that's very unusual. But all of this is to say that there are consequences, and just to reiterate the fact that the commission should be very mindful of these requirements and its duty to conduct its business in public as it moves through this process. And I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions that they didn't ask along the way? And we will, of course, as Marguerite mentioned, part of our role is to be available to help guide the commission through this as you move through the districting process and conduct your meetings going forward.
I have a question. Thank you very much for that presentation. I wasn't aware of, I know it's hard to believe these days when we're working at home and teleconferencing, that we have to be mindful about our communications and making things accessible. And in particular, also social media, I think, is also we have to be very diligent about that. My question refers to some of these executive orders that were made available. Is that made available on the website so we can review that, the specifics?
So the executive orders that we're referring to there are the executive orders that have been issued by the governor's office that are available to everyone in the state, that cover a kind of vast range of subjects about how things change under the shelter-in-place guidelines, and those are all publicly accessible on the state's website.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure when you were referring to public access to meetings, and specifically, I didn't know if there was something for that. And then also, we're going to be, I guess, as far as communications with the public in terms of outreach and communicating about when meetings are happening. I mean, what kinds of communication would be permissible as commissioners? Because I want as many people to participate in these meetings as possible and to know about them. And so I know we post on the website our agendas, but sometimes that isn't enough. So I guess maybe this is in the future, like coming up with an outreach plan, but what is our role in that communication?
That's an excellent question, and that's something that we're going to just very briefly touch on today, but discuss further in the next meeting. One of the commission's first acts is going to be to retain consultants, and one of those consultants is going to be a public outreach consultant. And so public access is a huge part of this process. It is going to be one of the commission's primary concerns on how best to facilitate that and how to, to get at these kind of specific and more nuanced issues that Marguerite was mentioning in her presentation of really being thoughtful and mindful of how to reach a wide variety of voices and communities within the county. And so I think that's it's a great question. It's something that is going to be kind of first on the list of commission business. In terms of the Brown Act, you're not going to violate the Brown Act by a member of the public coming to you and saying, hey, when are you meeting? And you telling them, oh, this is when our next meeting is, go to the commission's website. Those kind of things don't violate the Brown Act. The Brown Act is trying to get to a discussion involving a majority of the commission members. So, it's fine for you to answer questions like that from the public. There's the ex parte communication thing, but, that is, you don't need to be concerned about the Brown Act from just providing factual information to, a member of the public about how to participate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Commissioner Krugliak, please.
Hi, I have a question about pieces of information that we generate that are used to inform our discussion. So if I go and do research, or if I go and write a piece of code to analyze some of this data that potentially I don't discuss necessarily in a meeting, but is used to inform my opinions or my recommendations, what of that becomes public, if any, under the Brown Act?
So the Brown Act does have provisions for written materials or other materials that are distributed to a majority of members of the commission. And so, those things, to the extent you distribute them to other people, would be subject to the Brown Act and subject to public disclosure. Your own research and things that you go do on your own behind the scenes just to inform yourself, or, just for your benefit of being a full participant of the committee. The Brown Act doesn't require you to disclose, every piece of writing, every note that you're taking on subjects that are relevant to the commission.
Good. I thought I saw another hand, but I don't right at the moment. Commissioner Serban, sorry, and then Commissioner Pons.
I'll defer to go last. I have kind of a lengthy question.
Very good. Commissioner Pons?
Yeah, my question is more straightforward and sort of practical. I never thought I would ask a question like this, but I'm a little bit concerned about public and private safety and security. Everything is politicized nowadays, and everything that's politicized has an action and a reaction. So is there some way that we can ensure that our private lives are protected from our public engagement and activities? Because I got to tell you, everything now is just taken so personal by some very extreme individuals. And so it could be misinterpreted, because this will impact a lot of people's lives and their voices and their votes. So what do we say about that, Andrew? And what do we have?
Well, I'll let Andrew say his piece, but that is not something that the Brown Act contemplates or speaks to. The requirement that business be conducted in public is pretty absolute, and there are very limited exceptions to it, and there is no allowance for things to be done privately in closed session or otherwise, just because they may be controversial or inflammatory. There are provisions for, to ensure order is maintained in public meetings. This is something we have seen from time to time in in-person meetings where things are, getting truly out of control and dangerous, that we can kind of put a stop to things. but it's, you know, just the mere fact of somebody coming in and strongly disagreeing and saying things that are, you know, harsh and uncomfortable to the commission, you know, that's all fair game.
I think Hillary covered it really well, and you know, certainly our experience dealing with the Board of Supervisors, you know, we come across that frequently, where individuals have, you know, very passionate about a particular issue. And what is helpful is we have rules of procedure that help define how much time an individual can speak, and just being consistent with how those rules are applied helps deal with that. And certainly that is one of the roles of the chair, is to help, you know, as members of the public are commenting, and if they've exceeded their time limits, then, you know, saying thank you, appreciate your comments, but we're going to move on to the next person, and not giving them an opportunity to really take over the meeting in a sense. And Chair Boehm, I see Commissioner Katarina has her hand raised in Zoom. I don't know if you're able to see that, but.
How do you do that?
If you go to participants, there's a way to do it. So let me go Commissioner Serban, then Commissioner Katarina. And then Commissioner.
Sure. So out of an abundance of caution, I wanted to disclose that I did have 2 ex parte communications earlier today. And I'm disclosing that because those communications did have to do directly with an agenda item that we discussed today, the agenda item with regard to the selection of the chair. I spoke with a gentleman named Ray Monzon, a former commissioner for the city of Chula Vista in their districting efforts, and with Gil Ontai, a former state commissioner of redistricting in 2010. And my discussions centered around the process by which those bodies selected their chairs, and how the selection of their chair impacted the proceedings of those bodies. And in those conversations, where that was when the suggestion was came up to me to consider the rotating chairmanship. So I'll also submit that a summary of that conversation to you, Mr. Potter, as I understand is required by the bylaws. I just wanted to disclose that now, just out of an abundance of caution. With respect to Commissioner Pons's question as to the public-private interface, I did see that in the bylaws, there's a provision for the use of county email addresses by commissioners. Maybe Mr. Potter, you could address that briefly. And also, a question that I had was, it appears as if the Independent Redistricting Commission website will be a primary vehicle by which we'll be disseminating information to the public. I'm wondering what provisions are in place to allow for accessibility to that website for those with impairments, if there are provisions for that. And then my last question is, will we be provided with contact information to council in the event that we need to just, you know, quickly email them a question or something?
Hillary, do you want me to take those?
Yeah, unless, I mean, I think we've got kind of a mix of things in there, but Andrew, you're probably best suited to address it first. And then if anything else is needed from me, I can weigh in.
Great. So just right off the top, the 2 of those, email addresses, yes, all of you will be provided email accounts for this particular purpose. And Liberty or Nicole, if you want to chime in on the timeline for that, go right ahead.
This is Nicole. Yeah, we're working with the county IT department now to get a cost estimate and develop a timeline, and hopefully I'll have a more detailed update. Myself or Liberty or Barbara will have a more detailed update at the next meeting.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. And then in terms of the accessibility of the county's website, we are required to maintain accessibility standards. And so the county's website does comply with that. We also have a translation piece on there for individuals that either need to request translation services. That is one of the requirements for this commission, as well as translate materials that are on the county's website. So.
Thank you.
Good. Commissioner Katarina.
I'm sorry, what was the answer to the question of whether we'd be receiving or how we might contact council if we had individual questions?
I think Hillary, and I'll jump in here and then chime in. I think the preference would be we will develop a central point of contact for commissioners to send questions to staff, and then we will work with council to get those addressed appropriately.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
Sorry about that, Commissioner Serban.
That's okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay, Commissioner Caterina.
Okay. So I had the email question too, because I was concerned about public records requests and, intermixing, and also for safety. But my assumption is that our private emails are redacted anyway. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yes, that's correct. And, Hillary certainly chime in on this as well. But if it is dealing with commission business, then it would be disclosable. But any emails that aren't dealing with commission business certainly would be private and not be disclosable.
And I think that's a good thing to come up. Keep separation between the two, just to keep things clean. Things get sort of funny and complicated, when you're conducting private business with a public email account and vice versa. So, once we have the county email addresses provided, keep clear separation, conduct your commission business via your county email account, and conduct your private business via your personal email. And that just keeps things clean and uncomplicated from a, from a public records standpoint.
And then, Andrew, this probably applies more to you, but regarding the ex parte conversations and communications, I see that it wants us to direct them to you, but does it make, and maybe this is where the legal side could chime in if it's relevant, does it make sense for us to make this part of our public disclosure online as well?
Yes, and that's something that we internally are going to be meeting about very soon to talk about the best way to handle that. At this point, if you have communications, send those to the redistricting email address that you have been receiving. That's the most central point for all of our staff. But I do recognize that there might be a more efficient way to do that, and whether that is done during the meeting as part of each commissioner going through their disclosures. But we'll develop a process for to make it that efficient and easy for all of you.
And that is there is an item in the bylaws specifically referencing ex parte communications and kind of how those are generally to be handled to prevent, mostly to get the information out in public while not letting it become a distraction during the meetings, because the commission is going to be quite busy moving forward here. So.
Before I turn to Commissioner Larson, first, Commissioner Caterina, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Ms. Leone, did you want to weigh in on that, or?
I kind of jump in. I thank you for recognizing me, but I did want to second what Hillary was saying. We tried to design in the bylaws a way to handle ex parte communications that did not become overly disruptive to your meetings. Okay, you could spend with all of you, I talked to so-and-so and I talked, it could take half an hour, 45 minutes. You've got a lot of work to be doing. However, because there is a provision in the bylaws that gets the ex parte communications into the public record, if there's something important, by all means, bring it up at the meeting. So it's not that that's the only way you can disclose your ex parte. But we tried to find a balance there between taking up your time and on things that are maybe not process significant, but surely if there's something that you feel needs to be said, bring it up.
Ms. Leone, can I ask a question about the ex parte communication? Because the provision says to provide a summary of the communications. Like how, I mean, I've seen cases where the ex parte thing gets crazy. So
yeah, no, I understand that, Commissioner Serban, and I thought what you did just now was excellent. Who you talked to, the topic of it, and you actually offered even more than that. That you thought, oh, that's a good idea. I'll bring this forward. I thought that I think that is a very good standard. I thought you did a good job with that. And that put into a brief summary We make it part of the record. I mean, you're going to be judged on your transparency. We want to make that easy for you, but we want to continue to emphasize that. So we don't need treaties on your ex parte communications. Who you talk to, when, topic, conclusions, and you may say, hey, I put this on the record, but I really think we ought to discuss it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Commissioner Larson.
Yeah, I'd like to return for a moment to what Commissioner Pons said, having to do with personal safety. In the last couple of weeks, I think you've all seen in the papers, some relatively obscure commissions in 4 states having to do with certification of voting to consolidate votes up to the state level and then the selection of electors. Members of these obscure commissions that no one's ever heard of have been threatened. They've received threatening voicemails, emails, and so forth. There are a lot of crazy people out there now, and these are really troubled times. So let's all be aware of that. And I think we should report any possible incident to staff as soon as we could and share it among ourselves. Because it's really hard to say what's going to happen. A lot of people are affected by what we're going to do. Anyone who would get violent about it, I can't understand it, but they might. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Pons, did you want to add to that part of the
No,
conversation?
I'm glad that Commissioner Larson chimed in, because listen, this has got nothing to do with, thin skin. This has got everything to do with operational risk management. And I got to tell you, the moment you become complacent about personal safety and security is the moment that risk management goes up. And so again, I just want to make sure that we are all safe and due diligence in protecting our personal information, and especially in these public forums, because we've all noted that even in homeowners association meetings, there have been issues that have come up and people have gotten injured in meetings like that. So let's just be careful and cautious. That was the comment, the intent of the comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I will take the opportunity to say, I take personal security just as seriously as physical security, up to and including Ms. Gibson's reference in the law to security of public buildings. If we, or more importantly, any individual commissioner, need to have a private discussion, particularly with county staff and security, by that I mean the police, you should. And I only encourage that because if someone, I don't want to belabor the point, but if someone is willing to make a threat on these issues, think about what else they might be making a threat on to other members of the community. It's just part of our responsibility. It's a very sad comment on the world we live in, and I hope it will be a very, very, very minor, if non-existent part of our work, but it is something to keep in mind. I do want to say something else about outreach, but I don't want to occupy the floor. Did someone else want to speak just now?
Chair Baymet, this is Andrew Potter. I just wanted to add on to that if any of you are aware of any, if there are any threats or there are incidents that you're aware of, please let us know. We will share that with the sheriff, and we have a sheriff within our building at the County Administration Center that we work closely with on all kinds of issues, and so we would be happy to take that and work with them and work with you to address those. So just want that to be out there.
Other comments or questions? Okay, I don't mean to extend the discussion too long, but I did want to raise a point and a question. Ms. Gibson, I wanted to make absolutely sure there was multiple references to when a majority of the commission is talking or meeting or discussing. So by that, I understand that if 2 or 3 commissioners want to have a conversation, particularly if it's to further understand each other's points of view, that is perfectly permissible as long as, quote, they don't go too far, meaning they don't get into a serial meeting problem, or they at a certain point decide, okay, now we're into the business of the commission, and even if it's just 2 or 3 of us, we ought to have that discussion with everyone. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
That's right. The Brown Act reaches, majority meetings at which a consensus could be reached. And so best practice is to do, do the commission's business in public through formal channels, but a less than a quorum discussion of just a couple of members of the commission is not going to cause a Brown Act violation.
Excellent. And I say that because I think some of the issues that have come up might actually be helped by that kind of conversation among 2 or 3 or even 4 commissioners. I did want to just suggest that everyone think a little bit about kind of the flip side of the accessibility and transparency issue. I'm confident we'll be able to make our work fairly transparent and fairly accessible to a point. But in this world of technology and with the different kinds of accessibility that exist throughout the county, I would welcome a discussion in the not too distant future and any creative ideas people have of how we can increase our outreach, particularly to communities of interest and some of the issues that Marguerite was mentioning, because it is a challenge to get to some of those folks, to let them know what this commission is about and to get that input. I would only say it because I don't think it's too early to think about it. I think there's an awful lot of good brain power here, but it's something I would like to hear from the entire commission, to have a good discussion as soon as our next meeting, but whenever we're ready for that. With that, we may have exhausted this agenda item. Are there any closing questions or comments or concerns? Seeing none. Good. We can move on then to the next item, an overview of our timeline and the commission's activities for the next few months, which I think is going to be led by Mr. Potter and staff, correct?
I'm actually going to turn it back over to Ms. Gibson.
Oh, even better. Good.
And I'm going to move through this, mindful of the fact that we're already, past our allotted time here. I'm going to move through this really quickly. The intent of this item is to just give the commission a kind of brief introduction, just to orient the commissioners to what is upcoming within the next several meetings, handful of meetings. There will be a much more in-depth presentation of the full commission timeline at some point in the near future. But as things are going to be moving fast, and as we've seen, the commission is already kind of queuing into and raising questions about these things that are going to come up very quickly before you. We just wanted to introduce these items again very briefly at a very high level, so you know what to expect as we move forward into these next meetings. So at the and I apologize, I'm just going to look over at my other screen here because I can't see through the Zoom. This meeting, so the December kind of timeline obviously covers some of what we're doing today, which is the in-depth Brown Act training. Next week, some of the things that will be covered next week include the procurement process and the process for selecting the consultants that will assist the commission in complying with its responsibilities with the redistricting process, the demographic consultant, and public outreach consultants. And so we'll have more discussion about the process for procuring those consultants, as well as some information about what those consultants are going to do. Adopting the updated bylaws, obviously that's something we've already done today. And then into January and February, the commission will, the consultants that have been selected via the procurement process will be retained. There will be, if it turns out there is a need for additional consultants beyond those that have already been selected via the procurement process, there will be a process for that. The community outreach partners and public outreach plan, that is going to be a big part of the commission's initial responsibilities and duties. The commission is already clued into this and very sensitive to this, which is great because it's going to be one of the commission's primary responsibilities, which is to make sure that the public is thoroughly informed and engaged in this process. And so we're going to get into that in depth very quickly. And there's going to be, you're going to have consultants and help in doing that. And the commission's going to be very involved in those discussions as well. There will be an updated website that will be launched to just further facilitate that access and participation that we're talking about right now. The commission will continue meeting on a regular basis. And some of the things that will be covered, obviously this is not exhaustive at all. It's just kind of to highlight some major items that will be covered in those commission meetings in the months to come. Will be informational presentations and trainings for the commissions about for the commissioners on redistricting data, the software that's going to be used as part of the process, various legal considerations that are going to be important to your process and decision making, and also public presentations from the public to the extent that community groups, community leaders, other interested persons may request time to make presentations to the full commission on some of these the items that we've been discussing. The commissioners will also adopt a tentative calendar, which will include a public hearing schedule, and begin the process of public outreach and engagement activities, which will include a robust media, social media, PSAs, website postings, what have you, all geared towards that goal of maximum public input and participation and information. And again, I'm sure folks have plenty of questions and plenty of thoughts on this, but we will, as we get further into this, this is just meant to be a very quick overview of what is immediately upcoming, mostly just to address some of those things that have already come up as to, hey, there's some really important stuff here, and I want to make sure that we're getting into that right away. We're going to be getting into that very soon. The commission's going to be very busy, but we will give you a more a more comprehensive timeline and a bigger block of time to discuss and ask questions about some of these issues as we go forward.
Good. Questions or comments? Commissioner Diaz.
Yeah, you mentioned procurement of consultants, and that is there a way we can know maybe ahead of time in advance what that procurement process would look like?
That, yes, and there is going to be that will be agendized coming up, and there will be a full and in-depth discussion of that for the commission.
Before January, February.
Correct, before the consultants are selected, yes.
Okay.
Before the procurement process starts.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Other questions or comments? As Ms. Gibson said, I think we'll be having continued discussion about this. I did want to ask that the budgetary aspects of this will be included in the discussion when we start into that, about how much comes out of which portion, how what kind of reserve we have if there's need to spend additional on public outreach or something like that. We'll have a sense of what the finances are like as we go through the process, correct? And that might be
that's correct. Yes. Yep.
Good. Okay. Any other questions, comments on this topic?
Mr. Chair, we do have one request to speak on this item from the member of the public.
Oh, very good.
Oh, yay.
Thank you very much. Do you want to introduce them and bring them in?
Yes, I'd like to invite Janine Arakat to address the commission, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the commission on this topic.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. My name is Janine Arakat from Partnership for Advancement of New Americans. I wanted to firstly say congratulations on selecting a commission that's representative of the racial, ethnic, political, and geographic diversity of San Diego County. And as the first independent commission of the county are going to set a timeline and structures that take into account these diverse communities in San Diego. And I'm sure you all will go into this in future meetings, but want to put this question out there. I was just asking, want to know about your plans for trainings, including like the region's demographics. And I also wanted to thank the council for bringing up the concern about hidden communities in the census. And I want to highlight that there are a lot of groups throughout the county that have done extensive census outreach that would be good resources on how to engage diverse communities. I myself have presented on this topic to the State Commission, and we'd be more than happy to present to you all in the future. And we look forward to working with you all in the upcoming year, and hope to see you all again next week. Thank you all.
And that concludes public testimony on this item.
Thank you very much for that. And I would invite everyone to think about those issues. And again, we'll talk about them as we go. And I'm sure staff will have more to say about that at our next meeting. Okay. And apologies for not checking on public comment for that item. Any other questions or comments on this item before we move on? Very good. So the next item I have is regarding our next meeting. I am going to try, especially after today's discussion, to end each time with a request for any agenda items for our next meeting. If there's anything specifically that commissioners want to make sure we address or get more information on, I think we've covered some of that already, but I wanted to make sure we had a mutual opportunity to share any requests.
And can we talk about the county email addresses? I think that's kind of an important thing that I'd like to set up as soon as we can, or at least just get a status update on it.
I think that's a great request, and I was going to suggest to myself. So if we can make sure to have an update, at least from Ms. Temple or other staff, that'd be great. Any other requests, suggestions, comments for next time's agenda? Thank you, Nicole.
Just saying that I noted that comment for the agenda.
Excellent, thank you. Okay. Very good. So that concludes our business for today. Again, my thanks to everyone and my appreciation for letting me continue serving, for Ms. Diaz to serve as vice chair. Again, I'll encourage all the discussion and thinking you have time for, but our next meeting is scheduled for next Friday, December 18th at 2 p.m. At that meeting, we'll also be discussing specifically our regular meeting schedule. So if you can have your calendars handy and be looking at times that might be very hard to go. And I would just add, with the possibility that sometime during our sessions over the next year, we will have an opportunity to meet in person, how we can leverage that to the best advantage. I call that hopeful thinking on my part, but I'm hopeful we can get to that point as well. Any closing comments or thoughts before we adjourn? Thanks to each and one of you again. This meeting is adjourned at 4:46 by my clock, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas too.
Nicole, Barbara, and Aaron, are you able to stay on?
Sure. I can, yes, briefly. I have something at 5, but I can stay for a few minutes.
I'm gonna pop off, Andrew.
Yes, no problem. Thanks, Marguerite.
Thank you so much, Marguerite.
Oh, you're welcome, and great meeting. We've got a lot of work to do. Talk to you soon.
Okay, great.
And I'm popping off. Bye-bye.
And I'll get off the line soon. I did just want to let you know, I invited Ms. Diaz because I wanted to ask her if she wanted to run any part of the next meeting, depending on how the agenda was going, just to share the wealth, but we'll communicate about that separately. Any